we want to answer questions that you really want to hear answers to. And one of the most common questions was, what is it?
The difference between a Chapter 7 and a Chapter 13.
In a nutshell, a Chapter 7 is a fresh start where you don't pay your debt. You get a fresh start and you move forward. A Chapter 13 is where you pay back some of your debt. A Chapter 7 is you'll hear it, a liquidation. That sounds horrible. Sounds like you're going to lose your car, your house, and lose everything. Everything's going to get liquidated to get rid of your debt. If that was really what a Chapter 7 was, nobody would ever do a Chapter 7. Even though it's technically a liquidation, it's a liquidation of any assets that you can't protect. But if your attorney is going to file a Chapter 7 for you, he or she should be making sure that there's going to be a liquidation of nothing. If you want to keep your car, you keep your car. If you want to keep your house, you keep your house. And if you're getting surprised after you file a bankruptcy that you're losing these things, it means somebody didn't plan ahead. Because there's a perfectly good exemption schedule in every state for you to protect your assets.
Right. The other thing though with Chapter 7 is, like we're saying, you need to qualify. There's a means test. So
let's say I have $50,000 in credit cards. Can I qualify to do a Chapter 7?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
We have to look at your income. It's not really about...
Let's say I make $800,000 a year and I want to get rid of my 50,000 credit cards. Can I get it in a Chapter 7?
Not with a general rule, but if you talk to an attorney, there are...
You're right, there's always exceptions.
There's always exceptions.
I was saying that thinking she's just going to say no, but yes, being the attorney that she is, there is an exception. Let's say that $50,000 was done in business. It was a business debt. Then there's an exception for those. They don't have to pass a means test. I mean, there's always exceptions. But generally, if you make too much money, you can't get a Chapter 7. So let's say I did make that $800,000 a year and I wanted to get rid of my $50,000 in debt. They'd say, fine, you could do a Chapter 13. What's that mean? It means you pay it back.
We put together a repayment plan and you're paying over 36 to 60 months. And then at the end of that time, you get the same kind of discharge that you get in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy.
Chapter 7.
13 has lots of tools.
Yes. Let's say your car payment's too high. You bought a new car and you got high interest and maybe it's 22%, and you bought a car that somebody with perfect credit would have gone in and got that car on one of those special deals for $299 a month, but you're paying $600 a month because you had bad credit. And then you've been making those payments for a couple of years, and now your car's upside down. What do? You could go and try to trade it in. What's the dealer going to do if you try to trade in a car that's upside down? They're going to put that loan into the new car, so you're still upside down. But in a Chapter 13, if you've had the car long enough, we can cram the value, cram the loan balance down. Cram down means to reduce the balance that you owe to whatever the car's worth. So it's like resetting it back down. And then you can adjust the interest rate. Let's say it's 22%. Why don't we bring it down to 7%? So we could take a $30,000 car loan. If the car's only worth $18,000 now, we'll make it an $18,000 car loan. And if you were paying 22%, now you're going to pay 7%. That's something you can do in a Chapter 13.
And not in a Chapter
Yes.
7. And another tool in Chapter 13 is if you're in foreclosure. Your home is in foreclosure.
That's probably the reason that I think Chapter 13s are I'm so glad that we have a Chapter 13. For example, last couple of years with COVID, lots of people have lost their jobs, their health. Since 1929, we've never experienced what we've experienced financially. And originally, the government put in place a delay on people's foreclosures, but also that's ended, and now people have to deal with this. And if they don't get a modification, what are they going to do? Watch their house get sold? If your loan has been building up in arrearage over the last year, let's say you pay $2,000 a month for your mortgage, and for a whole year you haven't been paying, now you owe $24,000. Well, some of these mortgage companies are saying now you need to pay your $24,000. But the whole reason you didn't pay is because you weren't making the income. So now all of a sudden you're supposed to come up with $24,000? It's like somebody's drowning and you throw them an anchor or a rock. It's the worst situation. Mm-hmm. Well, chapter 13, instead of a rock, it's more like a life jacket. It says that you're past due on the 24,000. Well, we'll give you 5 years to catch that up.
We would get together and make a plan and something that the mortgage lender would agree to, and you just start making those chapter 13 payments to catch up on the arrears, but you still have to pay your mortgage.
Yeah, so the budget still has to work. Right. So let's say you're still not back to work and you have that 24,000. Chapter 13 is not going to help you because you have to have a way of staying current now. So that sometimes doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But let's say it doesn't work. You didn't get back to work. Okay, you can't do the chapter 13 because you have no earning because you still lost your job, and they're about to foreclose and sell your house. Well, do you want the bank to sell your house? Do you think they're going to try to get top dollar?
No, probably not.
No, they're just going to try to cover whatever their loan is, right? Problem is, you've been paying for this house for years. It's your dream. It's all your equity. It's your future. You want to get top dollar for that. But you don't really get the time from the bank. They're not going to give you 6 months to sell it. No, they're going to go get the short sale and get the money. Mm-hmm. Aha, chapter 13.
Right.
Solution. So yeah. What could you do in that case?
Within the chapter 13, you can sell your home.
So you might ask for how long?
You could ask for 6 months.
Right.
Time that you wouldn't be able to get without the chapter 13 bankruptcy.
And so if you have more time, you're going to have more time to get a buyer to pay full price. Again, the mortgage company doesn't care about that. They just want to cover their loan.
Right.
But now you have a chance to sell it at top dollar. Hey, one good thing is the real estate market right now is pretty high. Yeah. So if you do have to sell it, you might end up with quite a bit of equity, and it's not the end of the world. Wouldn't you think that if you pay back some of your debt, that would help your credit? You'd be rewarded for that. But like in a chapter 13, but in a chapter 7, if you don't pay back any of your debt, you think you'd get punished for that. Wouldn't that make sense? I mean, if my kids do their work, they do extra work, I usually give them a reward. Paying your debt is doing extra work. My kids just say, I'm just not going to clean any of the dishes and walk away from the dining room table. That's kind of like a chapter 7, right? You're just kind of walking away and say, but actually, that is exactly what happens. If you do a chapter 7 and you don't pay back any of your debt, it helps your credit more than if you do a chapter 13 and you pay back your debt.
Right.
Why is that? It makes no sense, right? It's not a very good reward system. And the reason is because it isn't a reward system at all. The whole FICO score system isn't for you, and it's not supposed to be a reward system. It's a system that the creditors use to see if they want to lend you money. It's kind of like, your score, but it's their inside system. Hey, should we let them have a car loan or a new credit card? And so when they look at somebody who filed a chapter 7, they know you have no more debt. So that's a good person to lend to. Meanwhile, that person in the chapter 13 who's paying back that money over 3 to 5 years, they have debt. So who do you want to lend money to? Somebody who has no debt that just did a chapter 7, or somebody who's still paying their debt in a chapter 13? So you get rewarded in a chapter 7 by paying less. It's kind of a paradox.
It is.
But doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever need a chapter 13. You can file a chapter 7 every 8 years. So let's say you had a medical problem or something happened, or you overspent or something 4 years ago, and now COVID hit, and now you're in trouble again. Well, it's every 8 years for a chapter 7. What do you do? After 4 years, you can't do another chapter 7, but you're just as in debt as you would have been if you had never filed a bankruptcy. You still need the relief. You still need the help, but the system's not letting you help.
So in that case, you file chapter 13.
You do a chapter 13. The chapter 13, if it's been 4 years since your chapter 7, you technically don't have to pay back any of your credit card debt. You only have to pay back taxes or priority debts or secured debts. That's kind of complicated, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can get rid of all your debt, 4 years after you file a Chapter 7 through a Chapter 13, if your budget says that you can't afford to pay it. We love 0% plans. Those are plans where you give nothing to the credit card company, just like a Chapter 7. Trustees want 100% plans. That's where you're paying back all your debt. They're just giving you more time, so you pay all the creditors. And a lot of times they want interest, 5.25% down in the Southern District of California. Mm-hmm. So all that's better than credit card debt. Still, I mean, it's paying 100% plus 5%. So there's a tug going on there.
It's worth noting that most Chapter 13 bankruptcies fail. And I think a big part of that is...
That's a good point.
Because their attorneys want them to pay such
high
amounts for 3 to 5 years.
Right.
So you really
You're right.
need an attorney
like
who's going to make sure the payment is
or more.
low, so you can make it through your Chapter 13 bankruptcy.
You know, I never thought of that actually till you just said it, but you're right. Like 70% or more of these plans are failing. And if the attorneys were fighting and get lower payments, they'd probably be more successful, right? So basically, try to go in low. And if you feel like your attorney's coming in a little bit too high, say, no, I can't make this budget realistically. What if I'm sick or out for a month, or anything happens that
big card problems where this big bill wasn't in your budget before,
right.
But now here it is. That's
right. It could be that. You could have a medical thing that you need that's not covered. What if a relative of yours has some kind of a problem and you need to help out? Things happen in life. We know that all the time. You get in a car accident and you didn't pay your insurance payment in time and you did cover it, or gap insurance. There's all sorts of things that happen that we can't. Your roof comes through and you got to repair it. You just don't know. So if you have such a tightrope that you have to make this payment, this really high payment, and you lose income, your 13's going to fail and you go back to square one. And that's not good. I got a cool one.
That's cool.
I don't know if you've ever heard of a Chapter 20. A few years after practice, I heard people talking about Chapter 20. What is a Chapter 20? Well, it's filing one case like a Chapter 7 and then coming back with a Chapter 13. So let's say that I am 6 months past on my mortgage and I have $60,000 in credit card debt. And let's say I make pretty good income. If I just file a Chapter 13, which is what most attorneys will do if your income's really high, because they know you want to catch up the mortgage. And so the trustee's going to go in and say, look, you make good money, you can catch up your mortgage, and you should pay a percentage of your credit card debt. So you're going to pay some of your credit card debt and you're going to catch it up all in a 13. Well, what if we just instead file a Chapter 7 first and just focus only on the credit card debt? And during that, and we see that your income's high, maybe you make $10,000 a month, but we can see that we could just kind of get this thing through, this Chapter 7, without paying any of that debt. So that's the Chapter 7 of the 7 plus 13 is 20. So we knock that 7 out of the way for 3 months. By the way, during the 3 months, they can't foreclose because you're protected by the Chapter 7. Even though it's only 3 months of protection, it's long enough to get rid of your credit card debt. So then we go back, and now you have no debt other than the mortgage. And we do a Chapter 13, and we say, okay, here we are to do a Chapter 13. We're going to do 100% of our debt. The credit cards are gone, right? So it's 100% of just the mortgage, right? So now if the trustee says, oh, we think you could pay more, we tell the trustee, there is no more. Credit cards are gone. It's only the mortgage. And so that way, you don't get stuck in a Chapter 13 that gets you into a higher payment where you're paying credit card debt. You could save $60,000 with that strategy. And it's a chapter, we call it a Chapter 20. You're doing a 7 and then a 13. So a lot of cool little tricks that we can do that can make a huge difference. Some other attorneys, attorneys are like doctors or any other kind of professionals. We each think that our area of law is difficult, or that there's so many details in it. I'm sure patent attorneys and personal injury attorneys, they all have their specialty. The truth is, it's all of the areas are complicated. I'm not a patent attorney, I wouldn't know how to do it. We've filed over 3,000 cases that we've got through the system. That's a lot of people to get through the bankruptcy process, and we're still learning. So, you know, and I remember when I got that LASIK. Did you ever get LASIK done?
I did.
Okay, yeah. I remember going to the doctor at the time, and the guy had done. There was 2 doctors. I remember that it was in San Diego, and they said you could go with this one doctor that had done 400 surgeries, and it only cost like $1,400 for my LASIK at the time, or I could go to the master guy who had done like 25,000, and it was like $300 more. And I was like, they're my eyes. So I went with the guy who, you know, had done
Of course.
that. So I think the same thing with the bankruptcy, trying to pick somebody out. Try to get somebody who has some experience. I know it's not your eyes, but it's your financial health.